Hey y'all. This week I want to go meta. So
Mental?
every week, meta it means bigger. It means to talk about things a little bit in the abstract.
Mental.
So every week on the Wholesome Show, Rod, that guy over there who we'll introduce in a second, and me, Will, we take turns. We take turns to find a story about science, tell the other person, dig up the juiciest facts, and hopefully, in the process of telling this story, we might explore some things about the nature of science, the nature of scientists, and hopefully you, listener, might find some of those things. Might find some of those things interesting or potentially amusing. How do you pick an episode, Rod?
How do I think about one?
How do you come to an episode? What's the process?
I basically sometimes it's completely by accident. I'll be reading something and I think that sounds weird, or there's got to be a crazy person behind it.
There's got to be a crazy person.
Science-ish.
Somewhere I can smell crazy person.
Yeah, I often I look for crazy person. Also, I look for unexpected, butt jokes.
Yeah, nice.
Like a recent episode where I was trying to choose 3 or 4 different things, and then one of the subheadings was "The Earth has an anus," and I thought, and I've found my episode.
Well, the whole episode just to get to that point.
It really was, but I mean, it's got to have the flesh around it. But I look for something that's just going to make you, in particular, go, oh,
yeah. Nice.
That's
I'm probably not that far. Like I don't necessarily dive on the anus comment, but if there's a happy butt joke in there, I'm happy to go. I'm always looking.
All butt jokes are happy.
I'm looking for villain scientists or idiot scientists or dumb scientists. Wherever there's someone who is using the power of science, sometimes for evil, but sometimes for dumb, sometimes for something else.
Definitely for dumb. Definitely for dumb.
But I got to say, this week. I couldn't do it. I've got a whole list. I had a huge list of potential topics. Some of them I've just got that one butt joke that I know will wrap around, or I found this idiot scientist and I put it in a file, and I'll come back to him or her at some point. I've got a whole bunch, and I looked through them. Sverdlovsky is for lovers. I'll do that one day.
Hard to argue.
Yeah, I know. Sverdlovsky is for lovers. I'll come back to that one day mainly because I love the title. Or
is it a person or a product? Just give me that.
It's a town, and it's not really for lovers at all. There's nothing about love in the thing. It's just I like the idea of Sverdlovsky is for lovers.
The T-shirt writes itself.
It's a town where something went wrong. So
cool. I'm into that.
Yeah, there you go. But not doing that today.
No.
Or another one, which I actually did look at doing for today. The crash at Crush. It involves train wrecks. I thought about.
Oh, we love a train wreck.
I thought, could I weave it today? But no.
Right.
Or the other one that I did start looking at was surrealist prisons. Which
Whoa. So designed by like Escher or Dali?
Basically, they weren't involved. They didn't do it themselves.
So to drive people crazy.
Absolutely. Okay, all right.
Fuck, man,
I'll give you the one sentence overview that one day I'll do it properly for you. Spanish Civil War. There were some people in the Republican side, I believe. Don't quote me on that right now. Who were art lovers. Let's say that, and were inspired by the surrealist movement. And they thought, okay, how do we torture our enemy once they're in prison? And obviously there are traditional medieval torture techniques. But these guys were modernist Republicans, and they thought, what can we do that's different? And they designed, and this is horrible. Like, we should not laugh at this because
no, it's excellent. I mean, come on, for ingenuity, ignoring all the people who suffered.
So yeah, surrealist prisons. So I mean, I will come back to this one day, listener. But it was stuff
better.
like
I'm going to race you, and I'll do it for you because that's what's right.
Seats that were at like a 10-degree angle. So you sit down, but you slide off. You just gradually slide off. Or a floor that was at a slight angle, or in the middle of your prison cell was a brick, like it was a concreted brick into the floor, so you couldn't pace in a straight line. You had to step around this brick all the time. And so ugly torture devices, but made by people who cared about art, which...
think of the psych research you could do, though.
No, absolutely. Indeed. So I will come back to them one day. But this week...
Remember not to read up on it.
This week... Oh, you can do it if you want. Surprise me. Find something new. This week, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I sat down, I looked at these topics, and I was like, something's wrong. So the first thing that I thought is, have you read William Gibson?
Cyber Crash and all that stuff.
Cyber Crash. Yeah. He like one of the biggest authors in sci-fi, and is often famed for coming up with stuff 20 years before it literally gets implemented. So
isn't he? He's supposed to have been the cyberpunk guy, isn't he? The original cyberpunk guy.
So he invented cyberpunk. But there's quotes from his books where, like 20 years ago, he has this quote where he says, in this future world, it's very difficult to get one person to love you, but you can get millions to love you through whatever. And this is, it's sort of predicting.
It's the Stalin allegedly quote.
Oh yeah, no, not the Stalin quote, but it the way it's framed here, it sounds exactly like modern influencers out there on social media that can get this thing, or a whole bunch of other things that he invented. But one of the things that I haven't actually gone into the book entirely, but my wife keeps bringing this up because it's called the jackpot. Now, this is a theory.
Not your personal hygiene.
The jackpot, my personal hygiene.
No, your wife bringing it up periodically or regularly.
Look, she can, but it doesn't make a topic for a podcast.
Have you thought about washing
a bath one day? A bath, could you?
Just anything, yeah, with fresh water this time.
But the jackpot. So the jackpot's a concept that it's in a pretty recent William Gibson novel. So it's part of a trilogy that it hasn't been finished yet. But it's a concept of cascading disasters. So
so that's the least positive version of jackpot I've ever heard so far already.
Yes. Has nothing to do with winning the lottery or all good. It's basically all bad. In the jackpot, so this is set 100 years in the future, and this is set after this cascading series of disasters that wiped out 80% of humanity. And the cascading series of disasters, you can guess, they're over the decades: climate change, pollution, drug-resistant diseases, and many other factors. William Gibson says, I didn't have the heart to make up the full list, else I'd depress myself. Wiped out 80% of the population.
Oh, God.
So I got to say, this is where I was emotionally this week. I'm like, okay. So here in Australia, 2020 has been. We started with the bushfire smoke. Well, the bushfires and the smoke that went with it. Here in Canberra, we had the hailstorm. Heaps of the city was devastated. At that point, people started making jokes. People started saying...
Well, because it's hilarious.
Indeed. But the jokes that they made were, what's next? Yeah. Locusts. I think the locusts did happen in Africa, and there might have been... So that started happening. But then, obviously, we had COVID, and now we're in the midst of the biggest... What do we call it? We don't call it that.
We call it...
Civil unrest, reckoning, uprising,
civil unrest,
resistance.
Not in Australia yet, but around the place, yeah, definitely.
Around the place, but also including Australia. So we're recording this about 10 or 11 days into the Black Lives Matter protests coming off the George Foreman execution.
George Floyd. I want to say George Foreman too because of the grill, because advertising works.
That's so terrible to me. George Floyd. That's anyway. So I was just like, I can't do anything in that space, and I thought, well, we can't do anything there. I can't do the normal topic that I want to do. I want to do the idiot scientist. I want to do something fun, but you are able to bring yourself to do this, Rod. But I can't. But here's the thing.
That's because I don't care about sad stuff.
Oh, that's good of you.
I have no compassion for people who suffer.
Now, here's the thing. Listener, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can observe that we, Rod and I, are in that terrible demographic of...
attractive men with large brains and many qualifications who are the life of the party. Terrible demographic.
That too. But also, we're white middle-aged podcasters. And at this... I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. You never introduce yourself at a party that way. There's other things. You have other qualities. I have other qualities.
You do.
But
many qualities.
But the white middle-aged podcaster is not the center of the party. I don't think.
Unfortunately, often it is.
But here's the thing. Around the world, we in this demographic are being asked to listen. We're being asked to listen to people of color, to black people around the world who are saying various forms of "I can't breathe." And so in this space, I was like, well, I can't. How do I do this? I hate performative listening. I hate this idea of saying I'm listening. I'm going to, as you sent me today, that terrible story, Rod, about the Instagram influencers who are, what are they doing?
they're donning blackface allegedly in solidarity for people who are Black Lives Matter marching. Allegedly.
Okay,
I'm gonna go with you. Kind of missed the boat on that one a little bit, didn't
look,
you?
indeed,
Not quite paying attention.
and that's not what I want to do. Not what I want to do at all. But I don't like the idea of getting out there and saying I am listening. I am here to help. That's not the right stance to take. But I did find something that gave me a little bit of solace, a little bit of something that we might be able to do in this space, which might be a little bit more legitimate. Welcome to the Wholesome Show, the science podcast that is normally about villains and idiots for people who sit up the back of the classroom.
And in which we ask the stupid, ridiculous, pointless, and downright banal questions so you don't have to. And occasionally, apparently, listen.
Yeah, listen. And we try and go meta.
What a podcast where we just listen. Are you ready? We hit record and we go, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, soundtrack. I'm Will Grant.
I'm Dr. Roderick Griffin Lamberts. I'm head of the Listeners Guild of the ACT.
Nice.
Newly formed.
There needs. Can I be the secretary of the Listeners Guild of the
ACT?
No,
man. You are my deputy head.
Well, seeing as there's two of us, I could probably be deputy and secretary, and you can be head and treasurer or something like that.
Oh, yeah. You should give me the money, definitely. All the subscriptions.
The Wholesome Show is brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science.
Yes, and delicious beers. Usually, we've returned to our roots.
Indeed, we have, but we're not in the same pub. So anyway,
we're not allowed to be. We would be if we could, but we're not allowed.
Okay, here's what I found that is legitimate. So, I hope it's legitimate. I want to try and do something that is useful in this space that talks to white middle-aged podcasters a little bit about what we might be able to do. So I'm going to start with Professor Jasmine Roberts. So. Professor Jasmine Roberts.
Is that a guy?
No, Jasmine.
That's what I was wondering. I thought we were only going to talk to guys today.
No,
for the first time ever.
No, we're not. We are.
Okay.
We are leveraging, listening to Jasmine, and hopefully doing a little bit about what she says. So, Professor Roberts is a lecturer at Ohio State University in the School of Communication. Mm-hmm. Not science communication, but she's a TED talker, a researcher, an academic. She's delivered a TED talk entitled Why I'm Tired of Talking About Race, which is well worth a watch, listener.
And then she talked about it?
Yes, she did. That
is meta and
normally tired, found 12 minutes where she could help there.
Yes.
It's an important part, and it's an important part of what I want to bring up in a sec, where she does talk about the emotional fatigue experienced by people of colour who are constantly discussing and attempting to educate their white or non-black counterparts about the experience of race. And, that's well worth a watch. But how she came to me is I was looking around at a bunch of different hashtags that are going through at the moment. Professor Roberts wrote a Medium article, and it started with a title that I thought, all right, this is...
That, to be clear, is an article on Medium, not sort of to judge its quality right now. It wasn't an average article.
Yeah, nor its length. It was it was medium length, which is a good length.
Oh, medium on medium.
But high quality on medium, high, medium.
The medium that is medium, right.
But it said something straight to me. The title, White Academia Do Better. Now... What I wanted to do.
How's that talking to you? I want details.
As I said before, all right. Add to our definition of white middle-aged podcasters. Add white middle-aged academic podcasters. So what I wanted to do is this article that she's written. One of the first things that I've seen through all of the hashtags and all of the discussion of Black Lives Matter, and particularly Black Lives Matter in academia and what we can do in our corner of the world about this, is that we should amplify voices of people who are not us. And at this point, this means, if you can, retweet their tweets, invite them onto panels, those kinds of things. But also, where possible, foreground their ideas and their thinking in your discussions. So that, I believe, says, I hope I can use some of Jasmine's words here. Read out some of her thinking.
You seem nervous.
I'm just trying to get the words right. I'm just trying to get the words right. I am. Yeah. Okay. Are you
nervous if you even vaguely appear to fuck it up? That you're just going to get blazed all over social media.
I don't expect that. I don't expect that. But I'd like to do it right.
I think you should try and do it right. But I don't want you to be too nervous because
you know me. I'm the school captain.
Trying to do good thing.
Yeah.
You're
all right.
trying to do good things. You can rely on me. If anything goes wrong, say it was that guy.
It was that guy. It was the other guy.
That guy.
No, I won't throw you under the
guy.
bus. I won't throw you under the bus. But yeah, white academia do better. And so the first thing, one of the things it says is amplifying the voices of people of color. And so I hope I'm doing that by citing that this is Jasmine Roberts' article and her ideas. And I'm amplifying. But one of the points further down also says that we in the white community should be having these conversations and thinking about what we can do to incorporate this. So I'm going to read out a little bit of Jasmine's article.
So what I'm going to do? I'm going to listen.
Yeah, look. I'm not going to.
It's not going to be easy.
I won't read the whole thing. I'll read the introduction, then we'll go to some of her key points, and then go.
Yeah, we need to talk a little bit because otherwise it'll be like, welcome to the podcast where I read a book.
Exactly. We're not going to do podcasts where we read a book.
No.
All right. White academia, do better. Over the past couple of weeks, our nation has been confronted with ugly truths and hard history, revealing how systemic racism rears its head in almost every space.
To clarify, this is America?
Yes, America.
Okay.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed down our typical lifestyles, people seem to be listening. That, I think, is a good thing, and I hope to be part of that. This moment feels very different from other situations when we had to address human rights in the context of race relations in the United States. With that comes a host of emotions that white people have rarely had to deal with because of their racial privilege, and this includes white people working in academia. Like many black faculty and black people in general, Jasmine Roberts...
Just call them black faculty?
No, I didn't. I hope I didn't. That would be my fumbling
I heard black
mouth.
Faculty.
The black faculty,
right.
and black people in general. Jasmine Roberts, have received messages and texts from white colleagues apologising, expressing guilt and remorse, and asking what they can do to support their black colleagues and friends. Quite honestly, and this harks back to her TED talk before, this at times is very overwhelming and seems like white people are projecting their guilt onto black people. White people are struggling with what to say or do. It's understandable that white people feel overwhelmed, guilty, sad, and frustrated. Yet this moment we're witnessing across the country is not about white feelings. It's about the constant trauma, historic pain, and dehumanisation of black people. And here to draw a parallel of clearly black people in countries all around the world, Indigenous people here in Australia, and frankly have been experiencing long before the deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery. Your black colleagues and students are not okay. So here's where she goes. If you are a white academic or higher education professional, there are some tangible actions you can take to support black faculty, staff, and students. And she's got a list of 10 as a starting point. Now,
shall we go through and critique each one?
We're not critiquing. We're here to listen. We're here to listen and see how we can critique them into our own lives. So, well, that's.
So, are you assuming? I'm just going to ask. Yeah. Speaking for Andrew Bolt and Alan Jones because he doesn't have a microphone anymore. Are they all good? Are they all well done? Are there any that you looked at and you went?
No. Look, okay. There are some that some are very easy to do instantly, and I'm shocked that haven't been done before. Some are choices about what to do in our daily interactions over the rest of our lives, and that many people may stuff up, but you can be better tomorrow.
One of the first things that struck me there before you start on that list is, how to better support your black faculty. We don't have any.
Yes, we do.
No, but I'm talking the entire university.
In our school or in our school?
Yeah, and more immediately, we really don't have many. It's literally like, I don't know who I'm supposed to support. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm saying that let's start there.
Okay. Well, look. I mean, okay. So clearly, one of the things is supporting students and supporting HDR students, supporting all people through the pathway.
HDR for you non-academic listeners is higher degree research.
That is indeed. So the research students, how we get more people into this world, so that the world is more diverse. Yeah. So the first point. So this is one that you can start doing straight away. And I was really interested in this because this is the reason that you have two white people on a podcast right now talking about race and not getting a person of color in to tell us.
Yeah.
So number one, stop asking black people what white people should do at this moment, and just admit that you don't know what to do because you've never had to think about your white privilege or anti-racism. And one of the key points in here is, and this goes back to Professor Roberts' argument about she's tired, is do the work educating yourself. There's books, there's articles, there's TED Talks, there's all sorts of things. She references a whole bunch, and I'll put a link to her article at the end.
Yeah.
Stop asking black people of color, to come and do that education yourself.
Tell me what to do. You do the work and just filter it for me.
Absolutely. And you can understand why that would be so tiring. In her TED Talk, she talks about an example.
Do you know what? Right now, literally today, so I read, for those of you who aren't Australian listeners, I apologize, but briefly, there's an author called Bruce Pascoe who's been writing some stuff about Aboriginal history in Aboriginal Australia. That
famous for Dark Emu at the moment.
Dark Emu, yeah, and it's just, I was shocked. I was shocked at how little we knew and how certain specifics were completely not covered, not only in high school and college or whatever. I studied at Aboriginal cultural stuff at a university level 30 years ago, and these sorts of things were not mentioned. And the reason I'm saying this is, what shocked me was, I didn't realize that was going on, but B, now I'm going, okay, I don't know what to read.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some great reading lists here, but and that's the thing. I think probably we in the white faculty or the rest of Australia, the rest of the world, could start sharing reading lists a little bit and say, Bruce Pascoe.
I think we should. So honestly, anyone listening to this, if you've got some excellent Australian history that isn't written by shitheads, I would love you to ping us on Twitter or whatever, because
that's a great hashtag straight away. Australian history not written by shitheads.
It's long, but it's true.
Okay,
but it's true. In this moment, like you brought it up, I'm the true history of Captain Cook. Well, what the fuck does that mean anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know what to read.
Yeah.
And I was trying to flick through, iBooks or whatever, and I realized I don't even know what criteria to apply anymore.
That's awesome. I'll say Bruce Pascoe straight away. Is enormously worth a read. Another thing I'll link to at the end or on the website is a list that Science and Technology Australia, so the peak advocacy group for scientists in Australia, has been doing on Twitter over the last couple of days of a variety of Indigenous academics in Australia, well worth following in all sorts of different fields. And so this idea, this came back to me. We've done a few Indigenous focused episodes in our history here on the Wholesome Show, and they've been great. And we've talked to some wonderful people. Like really, they've been great conversations. I hope I've
freaking hilarious too. Yeah. My God, we've laughed our asses off at times. It's true.
But here's the thing. I didn't want to do that again.
No.
In the midst of this moment going, can you come on, and please come and educate us. I wanted to try and us do that education and then go forward.
That's fair. It's also, it looks like, even if you don't mean it, the classic, we're not racist. We had a POC guest.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
How dare you?
Indeed. Yeah. So that's my reasoning there. Okay, point two. I think actually I may have blended point one and point two.
That's okay.
Because point
You've made
two...
it better. You've improved it. You're a communication professional.
Well, so she. Do the work to become an anti-racist. And again, this means go out and instead of just waiting for someone to educate you, go through... There are plenty of books out there, plenty of things out there that can be read, and we can share them. Obviously, she is writing in American context, and the American context is of interest to us. We too should explore the Australian context or the global context as much as possible.
I think starting locally is a good idea. By locally, I mean in your own country. Because it's easy to be overwhelmed by American culture, American problems, American, foci.
Oh, well, this is the big thing as well, is that, and it's really hard to understand those boundaries of when you get to talk into someone else's problem. And globally. So we'll just look at America. We here in Australia do not have a hyper clean house. So on this issue, I mean, just to use the metaphor. So us saying to America, "Hey, you should change," that's not a legitimate thing. But we here in Australia have responsibility and for what has happened in Australia, and so we can talk.
As we've learned this week, at least so to speak, Americans will say the word slavery, whereas here apparently, oh no, we didn't, because it wasn't called that, therefore it wasn't slavery.
Yeah, indeed.
Like, what the snapping fuck is going on there?
Oh.
Like, you really semantics. This is the time for semantics about that shit.
But
If you've got a bunch of people against their will dragged away, put in chains, and forced to work,
that's slavery.
I don't care what you call it. It's not good.
Yeah, and if you've come up with a legal definition that doesn't use the slavery word, then your lawyers are bad too. Like, seriously.
Oh yeah, rotten to the core.
Oh, and there was something I saw there that obviously slavery was abolished in the Emancipation Proclamation and by the end of the Civil War in the US. However, of course, slavery still continues to this day all around the world. But in Australia, it wasn't actually abolished until 1958. So,
but how could we have abolished it if it never existed?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. See, you're just being wrong now.
Okay.
But this, the argument over pedantics, like the pedantics of what the language was, is just it's inexcusable. Anyway, sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. People being forced to work. Prisoners with jobs, as
yes.
as Thor
Jeff
Ragnarok
Goldblum's character, wasn't it?
In Thor Ragnarok, yes. Yep. Still slaves. Yep. So, and still horrific, and yeah. Okay. Point 3, listen with humility.
I'm not good at that. Listening, fine. Humility.
And again, this says, perhaps don't do this podcast, but what I wanted to do is I'm listening as well. But what she is arguing there is don't engage in an oppression Olympics by saying, I have X marginalization, therefore we're equal or anything like that. All marginalizations matter, and all marginalizations should be not the marginalizations themselves. The forces that exclude people should be removed, but having some sort of competition between it is not the right
like my grief is worse than your grief, kind, or better than your grief.
Indeed.
Blah blah blah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So here's some things that become more focused on us in the academic world. Diversify your curriculum. So this means stop blaming textbooks for their lack of coverage of.
What the fuck's a textbook? When was the last time you used a textbook?
Look, I've got.
I know what you mean.
No, it's true. It's true. That's.
But seriously, I get these emails. I'm sorry, this is going to get the academic episode, but like I get emails from bookstores and other suppliers saying, "So, what textbooks are you using this semester?" It's like I haven't used a textbook since the year 2000.
Obviously,
that's because I was busy.
Obviously, all of textbooks are blog posts and podcasts now on YouTube videos. So. Maybe if you print out a few YouTube videos and put a hardcover around them,
read this transcript.
There's the textbook. All right.
But so yes, I know what you mean.
All right. Let's take out the word books there. Stop blaming the texts for the failure to implement a more diverse pedagogy. Instead, go out and find the ones that do address your field. In more diverse ways, and show the experiences of the rest of the world. And I've got to say, that's been we have not achieved nirvana on that point, but I know many colleagues around us has been doing significant work for some time, looking at Indigenous science, science from cultures other than white Europeans. So.
I didn't know that existed.
Oh, there you go. I know.
Who knew I'd learned today? I thought it was all about Europe.
This is us listening. I am listening with you. I'm listening while talking. So this is performative.
That's like circular breathing, and you're doing circular listening and talking.
Promote more black people in academic leadership positions, including department chairs, deans, provosts. Obviously, Rod and I are the most powerful academics in the world.
My God, the power.
But yes, if we are in those positions when we have power. So that's a no-brainer. Okay. Collaborate with black scholars, again, without tokenizing us. So, cool. Number 7. If you've done this, Rod, then stop. Number 7, do not touch your black students' hair. So...
What the fuck?
I know. Well, she's got under here. Yes, this does indeed happen. My black students have happened. It's appalling. We're not animals. And
oh my God.
I'm sure.
Also, honestly, let's ignore race just for a moment. Let's ignore race. Let's just talk about how you interact with people, particularly people over whom you exert power.
Indeed.
I'm going to touch your body right now.
Yeah. Don't do any of that. And
no.
in particular, don't be racist. Also, don't touch.
The idea you do that. Oh my God, your hair's so interesting. May I touch it? And then stick your hand out. What the snapping fuck? So people are still doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'm more privileged than I realize, because even the idea of it, I mean,
no one has touched your hair?
oh, people touch my hair, but I encourage it. It's my come hither looks.
Look. Okay. Yeah. No, I get. Yeah.
But does the mirror idea? What did she say? We're not animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fucking
So
insane.
look, I mean that is one of those unprofessional look, I'm sure.
The fact that needs to be in this list of 10.
Yeah. So I was reading this and I was thinking, okay, that was one of the things that there's a simple concrete action that hopefully you've never done anyway. But I get putting more black people in academic leadership. That's more challenging for us who are not at the top of the pile. But yeah.
But it's up there with, if you'd be so kind, don't put me in manacles and drag me away to your house and make me clean things for free. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, well,
but you know what I mean? Like, in terms of the attitude behind it, you're fucking kidding.
Absolutely. I mean, the attitudes behind it, this is what she's saying is recognizing white privilege and the parallels from white privilege out to white supremacy, and behaviors like this are clearly belittling and infantilizing and incredibly hostile. So
that's a good summary. Incredibly hostile in particular. Yes.
Don't praise your black student athletes on the field as you willfully stand in your white privilege and cannot advocate for their human rights or support their racialized experience. I totally agree with her, but I'm an Australian academic, so I can't care about Australian student sport.
You don't care about any sport, though, to be fair.
No.
You're not a sport guy.
So I would praise an athlete for running fast, I guess, if I happen to see them run fast.
Or if they're a jumper, though.
Yeah, indeed. Long
you ran fast, shit jumper, but well run.
All of those things. Yeah.
This is very American, though. I mean, the American system in colleges and so forth, we really do not share that.
No, we don't. But you can see as well, that's that you fit into that certain category of what you are good for at the university, and but then you don't threaten us in other ways.
Well, why is it any different to, well, you clean my toilet? Well, anyway, I don't give a shit about how much you get paid or what your conditions are. It's like, you entertained me. Thank you. Anyway, back to not giving you anything else that we get as well.
Number 9, acknowledge the role higher education institutions play in maintaining systemic racism. And I think there's a big one there about how we provide access and inclusion to all sorts of different people. And
add to that the role that we should have in smashing that shit down.
Oh, and indeed, we have a moderately open higher education system in Australia. More so comparatively, so you imagine that the very high end institutions in America, Harvard and things like that, ours are slightly flatter, but still, there are privileges between the sandstone universities and those non-sandstone.
It's kind of more subtle here because you don't associate mega wealth with going to uni here. Therefore, you kind of assume it's open to everyone.
Yeah.
The fact that there isn't this huge obvious distinction like there would be in a place like the States.
Yeah. But then
it makes it easy to miss it.
It comes down to the programs as well. What sorts of programs do different students do? Who ends up in the very service-oriented professions? Who ends up in nursing,
doctors and lawyers?
And who ends up in the powerful positions? There is much that higher education institutions can play there.
Not assuming that doctors and lawyers are the most prestigious in the bunch too, because
no, indeed. Well, who cares about them? But they've done some good stuff. Well, doctors have during the pandemic. So
I'm not against doctors. Make no mistake to all our doctor listeners, I'm pro. But the idea that's the most privileged or the most prestigious,
yeah, indeed, it should be
psychom academics.
Indeed.
Duh.
How many we've saved the world so many times, you just don't know it.
Of course, so we're like public health practitioners, only even more misunderstood.
Yeah, exactly. Number 10, provide space, unique support, and culturally relevant, responsive resources for black students, faculty, and staff. In some ways, that's about a central university sort of thing, but it's also about us finding out more about what we can do to support our students of colour and how we can be more responsive, more culturally relevant. I don't know what to do, and that means I need to think and listen on that one.
Yeah, look, and it's tricky. Again, in Australia, it's not it's not as obvious. Like the proportion of Indigenous Australians, for example, is much lower than it is in New Zealand and America and so forth. Obviously, Black Americans aren't Indigenous, but you know what I mean. So it's not as obvious who's doing what and where. That's trickier. I'm not throwing that in their lap. I'm just saying there are nuances here that make it quite complicated, which means we have to make effort.
Indeed. So look, I'm going to send out a list of other things that are worth reading in this space. That's the list of 10 things that Jasmine Roberts has put up. Well worth a read, and well worth.
She's of course Welsh, right?
No, Ohio. No, she. I don't know if she has any Welsh in her, but she is certainly black. So another piece that is well worth reading in a similar way is by former Wholesome show guest Summer May Finlay, here focusing in Australia, how to be a good Indigenous ally. She raises a number, listicle again, so good, listicle. You can be read out in a podcast, but she has a number of things that are well worth us exploring and us thinking. Things how to preference Indigenous voices, being okay with not always being part of the conversation. Be there for the good times and the bad. I know. Being okay with not part of the conversation. This is really important things for us white middle-aged podcasters to hear.
It's crazy that it has to be said, but yes.
Yeah. But the thing that I wanted to end on is one of the key points that Professor Roberts raised there is that it's really important that conversations about race and privilege are not only done and driven by people of colour or those who have been marginalised in other sorts of ways. Conversations about race and privilege really need to be done all the time by people who may not experience marginalisation and who probably experience privilege but don't talk about it very much. So there is my justification for saying that we here in the Wholesome Show want to be part of a world that is doing it better. We don't quite know.
Everyone has a right to have a voice on. Like everyone should be able to talk about stop being like I've got the summary of this. Stop being a dick. Think about whether you're being a dick, and if you are being a dick, think about how not to be, and also recognize that you don't always know the number of ways you can be a dick.
Yeah,
everyone needs to think about that.
I do believe I have yet to discover all of the many ways that I am being a dick. So
the
there you go.
important thing is you keep trying.
Oh, I do keep trying. So
not to be a dick, to find out.
There you go. How to be a less terrible white academic. Brought to you by Professor Jasmine Roberts.
Also us.
Nursed through the Wholesome Show a little bit. Something like that.
No, look, I mean, I think part of it too is it's easy to be afraid to enter into these conversations from the perspective that we have and the position we have. We're very worried about fucking it up. And we should be worried about fucking it up.
Indeed.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't have a crack.
Hence you noticing me getting nervous.
I see your shoulders going up and I'm more like, I still come back to don't be a dick and explore the ways you may be being a dick by accident.
I love that. Don't be a dick and explore the ways you may be being a dick by accident. Yeah. Well, thank you, Rod, for indulging me in this little bit of self-catharsis, flagellation type thing.
Well, I think you look good bleeding.
Thank you.
It suits you.
The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, and him, Rod Lamberts.
Chin chin.
Brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science and Oatmeal Stout.
Delicious.
Well, we'll be back with a more normal episode soon, listener. I was going to try and weave the crash at Crush through this, but no.
I'll come back with butt jokes next week, don't worry.